Welcome, everyone. My name is Gabriel Eckstein, and I want to welcome you all to this IWRA 50th Anniversary High-Level Panel, a conversation on water, assessing the state of knowledge and achievement. Again, my name is Gabriel Eckstein. I have the honor of being the host of this session and also the president of the International Water Resources Association. We are really delighted and honored to have with us four highly notable panelists, all of whom have had long and very distinguished careers in the water sector, and all of whom are considered experts in their respective fields, who collectively have published, I counted, more than 600 professional publications. Really an impressive and wonderful panel here. First, we have Lilian del Castillo Laborde, who's a lawyer with a PhD in law from the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. She served for many years as a counselor at the Argentinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, working on shared natural resource matters. And before that, she was director of the Office of the Treaty of the La Plata Basin. She also was a tenured professor of public international law at the University of Buenos Aires and is considered one of the foremost authorities on international water law. I should also know that Lilian is an honorary and a fellow member of the International Water Resources Association. We also have His Excellency Mahmoud Abu Zaid, who is currently the president of the Arab Water Council. He is a former Egyptian Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation and has held a variety of other governmental posts in Egypt. He has a master's degree in irrigation engineering and a PhD in groundwater hydrology from the University of California at Davis, as well as an honorary doctorate from the IHE Delft University in the Netherlands. He is a former president and now honorary president of the World Water Council. And I should also note he is a former president of our organization, IWRA. He's an honorary and fellow member of the association, and he's a recipient of the IWRA's Crystal Drop Award. Next, we have Jean Fried, who's currently a visiting researcher with the Urban Water Research Center at the Henry Samueli School of Engineering at the University of California at Irvine. Previously, he was a professor of fluid mechanics at the University of Louis Pasteur in Strasbourg, an expert consultant at the European Commission and president of the European Institute for Water. In his illustrious career, he has held numerous affiliations, including with the Margaret Chase Smith Policy Center at the University of Maine, with UNESCO's International Hydrological Program, and the Higher Council of Public Works of France. He holds a PhD from the University of Bordeaux in France in mathematical modeling of miscible flow through porous media. And he studied with, I believe he studied with Dr. Venti Chow, who is one of our founders when he was earning his master's degree on groundwater pollution modeling at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. And he is also a fellow member of the IWRA. And last but certainly not least, we have Ben Jędrzejewski, who most recently was professor in the Department of Geography and Environmental Resources, where he now holds the status of Professor Emeritus of Water Resources. He obtained his master's and bachelor's in environmental engineering from Wrocław Polytechnic in Poland, and then his PhD from the Southern Illinois University at Carbondale. Ben also served as the executive director of the IWRA, our association, from 1998 through, I believe, 2006, and served as editor-in-chief of Water International and editor of the International Water Resources Association's newsletter. And Ben is an honorary and a fellow member of IWRA. So thank you, all of you, for joining us today and for being willing to share your experience and knowledge about water resources. The way we're going to run this is to in an interview and discussion format, and I will begin with questions for all of you, and hopefully we can get all engaged in a good conversation on water resources management, the history of water, and how we deal with water resources over the past 50 years, but also looking forward into the next 50 years, into the life of our association. So all of you have had really quite distinguished careers in the water sector. And Lilian, you were president at the Mar del Plata Conference in 1977, which really, I think, started the whole, it put water on the global agenda for the first time, certainly at the UN level. And brought people to really consider the state of the water, the world's waters, and how we manage them, and how we create access, and how we might want to help people get access around the world. So first of all, I wanted to ask you, what was your role at that conference? And secondly, how do you see that we've progressed since 1977 in our understanding of how we might or how we can manage our freshwater resources?
Oh, hello. Hello, Gabriel, and hello, everybody. Well, first of all, I want to say that it is a great pleasure and a great honor to have been invited to take part in this high-level panel. So I appreciate, Gabriel, this. Well, I think that when IWRA was created in 1971, it was a very special, this decade was a very special moment, because there were many things going on there. And it was almost the 1 year before the Stockholm Conference on human environment. And I think that this conference, this make a big change in the mind of many policymakers. I know, for example, from people that going back to their countries and say, well, we have to change now everything because this is a new world we are facing now in relation to natural resources. And I think that there was then almost a coincidence between the starting point of IWRA and the starting point of environmental law or environmental in general concerns. And I think that it was something that made the difference between only an economic approach into a more comprehensive approach to water and to natural resources in general. And in the conference in Mar del Plata, in Buenos Aires, in Mar del Plata, in Argentina, in '77, I think that there were people also working on that confluence between the uses and the utilization and also the protection of the resources. And so I think that it was really, I don't know if it was really, how do you say, applied all the recommendations of Mar del Plata conference. I think that after that, many other conferences appear in the future. But I think that in Mar del Plata, there were some, how do you say, comprehensive issues that were dealt with there. And I think it was a really important point, the decade, and that IWRA was already started because it could, all the people was there to just to incorporate all these new concepts and new approaches. And so I think that from that decade, all the things were different. I said, well, from there to now, the things were different. And everything started there because we didn't have the concept of governance, for example, before, because there was no need to do that. Or the concept of, for example, all the integrated water management, or all these new approaches came from that decade of the 70s. And so, and IWRA was already there just to be imbued by all these new approaches. So I think that it has been a very, how do you say, important 50 years. And we have, how do you say, helped to develop all these new approaches in IWRA. It has been a decisive participation of our association in all these changes.
Thank you.
I don't know if I answer what.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to pick up on something that you said, and actually, I want to ask Mahmoud. Lillian mentioned something about the role of government in water management, and maybe prior to that, people didn't even think that government had a role. And you've had a pretty long experience with being in governmental positions. Dealing with water issues. And I'm wondering what you think in terms of the role of government going back from the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and how that might have changed.
Well, I believe first we have to indicate that at that time, we were looking at water from a very narrow perspective, focusing only on water-related issues and how to deal with them from a single viewpoint. So within the governments, we can see that there are ministries which are mainly concerned with water resources, while now we see the ministries are involved in more than just water resources. So the different governments, different countries, you see the Ministry of Water Resources, Ministry of Water Resources and Irrigation, and we look at water only from that narrow viewpoint. While now we see a broad picture of the water resources. We see now the future we want. The concept of smart water resources management and smart technologies is adopted by ministries concerned with water. The adoption of the water, food, energy, climate nexus approach, the interlinkages with ecosystems, climate security and its relation to human security and sustainable development, water productivity and water measurements using remote sensing, GIS techniques, particularly for measuring evapotranspiration, the use of non-conventional water resources. All these are issues which are looked at right now and were not considered by ministries of water before. So, nanotechnology, water governance, hydrodiplomacy, these are all issues that are dealt with now much more in depth and in details than before.
All right, Jean, you wanted to contribute, please.
Yeah, I would like to elaborate on the role of government. I am familiar with two examples, which is one France and the other one the European Union. And I wish to remind everybody or to teacher to say that the first French law concerning water and management of water is 1964. When the concept of river basin management was introduced, and also the polluter pays principle. Then there were other laws in 1992 and 2006. And concerning the European Union, it started in '76, and with the first directive, that is a law, and then in '80 with the first groundwater. But in the case of the European Union, there were a very specific aspect, which is that the environment was really not of concern. What was of concern was to avoid the distortion of competition. That is, many countries, not many, but several countries which were members of the Union of the time had already some environmental laws in the late '70s. And so the industry there had to pay higher taxes than the industries in the other countries which were not concerned at all with the environment. So the European Commission tried to avoid that distortion of competition, and it is ourselves inside the Commission who started to really take care of the environment and introduce a little later in the 80s a water policy for itself, for environmental concern. There is another aspect. I think that it is really that everything changed in 1987 with the Brundtland report and the introduction of the concept of sustainable development. And of course, in 1992 with Agenda 21. For the moment, that's all that I wish to add.
All right, thank you. Let me bring in Ben. I wanted to ask you, because you've also been very involved with the water sector for many years. And what do you think, and so this is building on some of these other comments that have been made, what do you think we did not know about water resources 40, 50 years ago that we know today that has been critical in terms of how we manage freshwater resources?
Well, I think that there were many things we didn't know that we know today, but our approach was, basically dominated by command and control and into planning, development, and management was sort of not really there yet 50 years ago. And so what we really didn't know was on the physical side, we didn't know about the adverse consequences of water resource development, like especially in the large dams, that there were environmental problems that we didn't think about or we didn't know about, and the ecosystem aspects, all of these was sort of still yet to come. And now we know much more about it, and we kind of moved. When I came to the U.S. from Poland in 1979, I was really surprised to learn about something called public involvement in water resources. Command and control in Poland was so strong that we didn't even think about asking people about water resources. And this has evolved and evolved. So if you think about now the human and societal dimension of this, we know so much more now than we knew in 1960s. And of course, the fact that 1970, like in the United States, is the year often referred to as the start of the environmental law and legislative revolution, where maybe a dozen environmental acts and statutes were promulgated and developed over the years. So we know much more about the complexity and interconnectedness of water resources, and we know more about the societal dimension, but still not enough. And of course, the governance has emerged in the 90s as a critical element, which we're still working on. That's my take on this issue.
Very great. So I should note also for our members of our audience, we encourage you to submit questions. There's a Q&A box that you can submit questions. There's also a chat feature here, and we will try to get to all of your questions as you submit them. So we do want to encourage you to participate in this. If you have anything in particular you want to raise or bring to the attention of the panelists. So Lillian, you've heard our colleagues here talk about this, the differences in knowledge, 50 years ago versus today, and all these things that we've learned. And I guess my question for you is, do you think we've actually put this knowledge to good use? Have we been effective with this. You yourself mentioned IWRM. You've mentioned some other aspects in terms of water resource management and allocation. But have we learned well enough? Have we put this knowledge to effective use, do you think?
If I understand, it is how the technology influence the water management, something like that.
No, not necessarily, not just technology, but even just knowledge of management in terms of whether it's recharge control, artificial recharge, having information and sharing information, collaboration, and so on. I'm just, we were looking a little bit towards the back, now to the past. I'm looking now to the present. I mean, where are we today? Have we learned good lessons? Are we managing our water resources well today? Are we deficient today?
Well, I especially I can talk about what I know for my practice. No, but I think that we have we have improved in this exchange of information, and perhaps what is important is now in these 50 years the possibility to gather data is how it has grown a lot. So we know the possibility we have the satellite information and all that. And so that was not an information available 50 years ago or 40 years ago, perhaps. And also, I think that it is very important that you don't need to be, how do you say, you don't depend on the other riparians just to share the information. You just got the information. And I think that this is a big change. So it is like independent. If you want to give me the information, you can give me some information about your policies, about your projects or something like that. But I can know everything about the physical, how you say, reality without the collaboration of others. And I think that this has made something, it's very important. It is a lot of transparency of in the management of resources now that it was not there 50 years ago. And I think this is a big change. And it has, how do you say, governments are now not so, how do you say, jealous about their information, because they know the information is there, is available. And so I think it has influenced a lot water management and and governance especially. And so I think that we were, how do you say, we were living a big change in these 50 years about the integrated water resources and also in the concept of the unified basins. And this is due to technology, not to other, how do you say, to legal improvements that are also were illegal improvements, but how do you say, the law is a little behind the facts many times. So I think that was very important. And I think it's, this is, and I don't know if this is it is, how do you say, something to talk about, but now that you are saying that about the influence of technology, I think that there is a, how do you say, something that it is remaining as a very necessary issue, and is the value of water. We will have just a webinar on that. And this is something very difficult to get, and the value of water. And I think that there we are also making some progress, but we should do, this is about the next 50 years, we have to do something projecting this issue of value of water for the future.
So it sounds like you sound fairly positive in terms of the lessons that we've learned, that we've made progress. But I want to push back a little bit on this, and maybe with you or maybe some of our other panelists here. We have some of the most polluted groundwater resources ever. We have depleted rivers. We have rivers that are no longer rivers, that are completely dry. We have lost environments, right? And we have still, I think it's 800,000, a million, or 800 million people without access to fresh water, and the impact on the environment. I'm just wondering, what have we really learned, or is it just such a huge challenge that it is so overwhelming? And I'm wondering, I mean, are we effective in water management? Mahmoud, do you want to take that?
Okay. Definitely, the knowledge at that time was very much restricted to say quality of the groundwater and the pollution of the aquifers. But with time, the knowledge expanded, and so we started to know the different aspects of water, and we learned more about the IWRM. IWRM is a concept which has been introduced lately. I mean, lately, not very recent, but not a long time ago. And we are able now to look to the global picture of the issues. We valuing the water is quite an important issue now that everybody is looking at the scarcity, water scarcity. Water scarcity is a big question, and it is with time it is it's increasingly becoming more serious. So with these new aspects, I think we can realize that the time of easy water is over. We are looking at more complicated things, and it's wise to quote that knowledge is power, and time to act. It's now time to act rather than just to think of the different aspects. I believe water leaders who have at their fingertips all electronics and digital means to be much more knowledgeable and enlightened than before are attempting to ring the bells with serious warning. And that, as I mentioned, the time of easy water is over. So the world is hence taking wide strides in the move from the Millennium Development Goals to the Strategic Development Goals, global targets, especially mentioning the Goal 6 related to clean water and sustainable for all. I think the concept of non-conventional water resources is becoming more knowledgeable now and serious, that we are focusing on. There are questions like climate change, for example. All these are new issues which we look at now in more details and in a comprehensive and integrated manner.
So let me thank you for that. I know, Jean, you wanted to follow up, but I want to ask you, all of you have been academics and teachers and professors at some point, and Jean, I want to put you on the spot. What kind of a grade would you give us, the world community, in terms of how we manage our water resources?
This is exactly what I intended to say, not give a grade. That's a good idea.
Oh, please.
Our problem is there is a wide gap between our theories, our theoretical work, especially as academics, for instance, and the reality of the implementation of the laws, of the regulations, etc. Just to give an example, we introduced already in the French law of 1964, but then more systematically, the idea of active public participation or stakeholders inclusive water management. It is wonderful in theory, but when we look at the implementation, it's not necessarily very well done. I have here in California the example of the new, 2014 Act, Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And a recent survey we did during 2020 among the stakeholders showed that, for instance, there is public participation, but there are many complaints about how it is performed. So this is just the first idea. The difference, I gave a great grade for our theories and IWRM, integrated water resources management, and what I said, active public participation, etc. But when we come to the implementation, it's a rather low grade. And now we are facing other aspects. I think Lilian just said a few words about that. These are the economic aspects, the economic impacts, for instance, of climate change on water. And another aspect that you mentioned, Gabriel, which I will put under the title of equity, the problems of disadvantaged communities who don't have access to water or very, very difficult access to water, residents, even in our state, residents, for instance, who lost income due to the pandemic, low-income communities, maybe communities of color, for instance, or some others, or the agriculture workforce in California, or poor rural communities. So we have all over the world, even in so-called rich countries, problems of people who don't have access or very poor access to water. And there is a lot to do in the implementation of already existing regulation.
So you're positive on the theories and the ideas that we have, but you're negative on the implementation.
Exactly.
Ben, do you agree? I mean, if you had to give a grade, do you think it's you give the same kind of perspective?
I agree with John, definitely on theory versus implementation and practical life. My experience in this is that when trying to talk science and research to groups involving decision makers and politicians, suddenly the whole issue becomes clearly politicized. In other words, I have to now think about people listening to me being advocates of some political, dimension that I was not even thinking about, and so that creates difficulty. One example is when I am talking about the need to increase acquisition of data so that we can make better decisions, because the data is poor and it's hard to me as a scientist deal with that. Some stakeholders will say, no, Ben, the data are as good as they need to. And I don't even understand that. But from political and legal aspect, you probably know that that's the issue, that's the problem. more data may change the equity issues and situations that are well beyond a scientist like myself, who is just a number cruncher. Yeah.
So is the problem the conversation between scientists and policymakers, that the challenge in understanding each other?
I would say so. That definitely I learned over the years how important it is to understand the political dimensions of solutions that I am proposing, and not be ignorant and say, well, this is science, just science-based, do what I say because it's truth. It doesn't work that way. It's generally, I have to see who is worried about my results and who is supporting them, and try to see if there is a way to accommodate, other stakeholders, and be responsive. In other words, don't oversell it, and don't, but you can't really, do certain things in science, but you definitely not hoping that too much, that the science will be given plenty of weight. Often it's given less weight, and you have to fight for it. And one other aspect that I wanted to mention from my experience is that it's so difficult to communicate science, and we're really good at communicating to colleagues and other scientists. But when you start communicating to decision makers and stakeholders, that's another dimension. You have to learn that language, and that's very difficult.
Right. So
May I say something? May I say something
please.
about that?
Absolutely.
Yes, because I think that it is for policymakers, it's a question of priorities. Where do you put your priorities, is in water management or in other issues? And I think that there is a very important, role of IWRA, because it's an association that's put together the scientists, and managers, and politicians also, because it's of its comprehensive goals, and also because even in the statutes of IWRA is to influence policy, and so it is something that it is embedded in our association, and this is very important. And during these 50 years, all the congresses and all the publications and dissemination of knowledge has been with this integrated image of this integrated approach of scientists, policymakers, managers, and this is really the big input of IWRA. And I think that we need to stress this because it has been very important. It is very important because there are many, scientific associations. You have, for example, the hydrogeologists or something like that, the people working on that field. But this is the scientists working in that field. But what IWRA does is just to join these people, the scientists, with also the policymakers. So there you can make the positive outcome of our science and policy. And this is, I think that it is, we need to stress this because it's very important. It has been very important, and it is very important. Thank you.
I fully support what Lilian has said. Fully support.
Yeah, thank you. Ben?
I just wanted to add to what Lilian said about interdisciplinarity, because when I was looking through some documents, I noted I had this quote from Vanti Chow, our first president, who said something very interesting. He says that in water resource planning and development, we are facing extremely complex problems, and by their nature, these problems cannot be solved effectively by science and technology alone. He said, not merely by economics, even law, religion, politics, or resignation. That's the last one was interesting to me. The modern concept of solving these problems is based on interdisciplinary approaches. provided by cooperation of all parties concerned. So that's end of quote. And I was, what Lillian said, that specialists are, communicating to each other and developing excellent science in various disciplines and sub-disciplines. But IWRA, since its very beginning, was trying to become two things, I think: interdisciplinary in terms of the science dimension of it, and also participatory on a global scale, because the idea was to create those networks of water professionals from all countries of the world and exchange ideas to advance the advanced water resource management. And I think about these two things: interdisciplinarity of our mission and publications, as well as the global networking.
Yeah.
So let me ask this, Mahmoud. You were in a policy-making role. You were the Minister of Water. I mean, how do you see to integrate all these different disciplines? Because clearly, in your role as Minister of Water, you take the scientists, you take the politicians, you get the social movements, you get the economists. I mean, how do you integrate all this together?
Yes, of course, it's quite a challenge, of course, and this changed with time. I've been a minister for 11 years, and at the beginning, the question was not so complicated as it developed with time, the more issues, the difficulties, and so on. So the formulation of different committees within the ministry, committees with members from different disciplines, from different departments, from even outside the ministry. I think it was quite helpful. Then, of course, here we can look at the role of institutions like IWRA and ICID and others, where they organized conferences and meetings where they discuss the different aspects of the water issue from the global picture. So within the ministry, we could learn and we could make use of the experiences presented by these international organizations. So beside the formulation of important departments within the structure of the ministry, we also made use of the experience presented by other organizations, other institutions, like the IWRA. I think it, with time, of course, with the introduction of different aspects of water, the issue became more difficult, and it was necessary to integrate different groups and different disciplines within the ministry. But I think it goes without saying that it has to do with the thinking and the planning of the decision makers, either within the ministry or within the whole government.
So, yeah, John.
Something about, we have a very good example of multidisciplinarity, integrating also the political aspect, which is the European Union, and the work that is being done at the European Commission the executive body of the European Union, which has the initiative of proposing the laws to the Council of Ministers. And this really, we have people from many countries, 27 as far as I remember, with various languages, very different cultural origins, and then also the multidisciplinarity between the scientists, let's say engineers, mathematicians, etc., the lawyers, of course, because lawyers and scientists are working together in the same groups. I know that perfectly because I directed one of these groups for groundwater years ago. So I think it's worthwhile mentioning what exists within the European Union, although we know the European Union is so criticized, etc. But at least this is a success, and a good success.
Well, so I'd like to take us now to have a more forward-looking perspective and ask you, as we move forward in terms of managing water resources at the local level, at the global level, transboundary, regional, and so on, where are we heading to? Where are we moving to? Or where do we need to move? And just give you an example. We have one comment from a participant about, do we keep IWRM, for example? Do we move to something like nature-based solutions? Or is there other areas that we will want to move to? So Ben, do you want to start that? Where do we go from here?
Yes, we definitely should take up the new paradigms, the new nature-based solutions, and try to in my personal opinion, be less interventionist and more along the adaptive management, frameworks, where we have to learn while going forward, and so my idea is that yes, water resources are very complex, very complicated solutions. We need to be careful. And what worries me the most is that due to climate change is just mind-boggling in terms of how the availability of water resources can change, how demands for water resources can be affected, how suddenly farmers in the Midwest may need irrigation water that they don't have, or while even if the water is around, they can't bring it to the fields. All of those things have to be if we have anticipatory approach to the problems that will arise, I think that would be my prescription for it, because it usually is better to be proactive than reactive, in that respect. Unfortunately, we most likely going to be staying with the reactive thing and maybe not have solutions that like nature-based solutions or adaptive management solutions that would be helpful.
So Lillian, building on that, I want to ask you, but from your legal perspective, are there legal tools, legal mechanisms that we are going to start utilizing, that you see coming on the horizon, or that you think we should be using to address some of these water issues?
Oh yes, I know. Well, what I was saying at the beginning, because it's that law is always a little behind the other issues like science, for example. But I think that yes, there is something that there is a difference in evolution in law. I think the European Union has made something very important, and other regions are not following the example of the European Union. And I think because the UN Convention is not is rather weak in its implementation, it's not working as how to say. In a very important way, and the European Convention, the ECE Convention, is trying now to get a wider acceptance, but it is not only European, and it is this is a very, very important convention. Perhaps it can do something better for the how do you say, a common standard of law between countries, if it is really, it gets some broader membership. But in any case, I think that the law has not been very, very important but I think the law has to make a real change in water management. I think so. I think that we need something more acceptable, something that it was really accepted by all in general by countries and by governments, because we don't have that tool. And when we mentioned the Mar del Plata conference, and one of the, how do you say, of the goals of that conference was to have a, how do you say, a water organization, something like that. Something like it was something to go on in the United Nations just with an organization, or at least a program or something about water. And it was not, finally, it didn't come out that possibility of that project. And so I think that there is in the water sector, there is now something like a comprehensive legal instrument that we can rely on. And it is, for example, it is incredible, but we are always, how do you say, going back to the Helsinki rules. And the Helsinki rules are not only a 67 instrument, it is only an instrument, it was before the Stockholm and the many other changes, but it is like a reference. And so perhaps on that general reference, on something that it was widely accepted, we can think of doing something similar, but with legal, with something like how do you say, legal applicability, not only a recommendation of an institution, even if the Helsinki rules are now something like a customary source of for law and for legal cases, and something that when you need something, when you need to have something to rely on, you have very few general instruments. And I think that perhaps the, how do you say, not just these big instruments, but for example, particular agreements between two countries. In that, for example, in that fields, we can see some progress, because we can see that they are including more environmental concerns. For example, they think about water services, or the importance of wetlands, things like that are included in a small and particular agreements. And so we have to try to enlarge that local instruments into some wider and general instrument. But I think we don't have it just now. So we are just missing something in law for the water resources in general.
So let me build on that, Mahmoud. The idea that these legal instruments aren't yet there, and they don't have all the content. I mean, we need policy to lead to these legal instruments, right? So if you're looking forward, looking ahead into the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, we also have the 2023 UN Water Conference coming up. The midterm comprehensive review. I mean, what would you like to see on that agenda? What kind of policy ideas do you think on the global level, or maybe even on just a regional level, different regions of the world, where should we be going?
But it's for me, Gabriel?
No, for Mahmoud.
No, because
Well,
sorry, I wanted to say that perhaps
Please.
the most important thing is to change from the local approach to the global approach. This is because the people always, governments and policymakers always look water as a local issue, and that's this is we have to, I think, to change from this local to global approach of water.
Do you Mahmoud, do you agree that water should be looked at globally and not locally, or what do you think?
I think we should move at all levels. It's very important to look at the local level, the regional level, and the international level. And when we look at the local level, we should keep in our minds the implications on the regional level, and maybe even at the international level too. But I think there is, I would say, a lack of instruments which handle the water issues at all levels, even if we look at the framework, the 1979, the 1997 law, we still see that there are some issues which are not agreed by all countries. Not all the countries have agreed the framework, agreed on the framework. So I think, but when we move at these levels, there should be some sort of integration between the actions taken by say the local level and the regional level. They should somewhere work together to fill in the gaps and try to come up with solutions which suits all these levels. So I think in conclusion, there should be work at all levels, but meanwhile, there should be integration and cooperation between work on the three levels together.
So do you think as we go forward, that should be one of the big items on the policy agenda, integration or cooperation at all levels, or are there other priorities that we should have on the international agenda for water as we move forward?
Well, there should be integration, of course, between the work on the three levels. But when we look at the international level, we see that there is a need for more in-depth considerations. I think it's not always true that when you work on the local level, you should look at the international level too. But when you look at the international level, you should keep in mind the issues on the local level. So,
yeah.
So, Jean, what do you think are going to be the most significant water-related challenges that we face as in the next 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? IWRA has been here for 50 years. Now we're looking to the next 50 years. What do you think will be if you had to pick one or two, the most significant water challenges?
I think that the most significant water challenge for the coming years is really climate change and its effects, and especially its economic impacts, I think. And because especially in countries where there are already droughts, because we'll face increasing drought intensity and frequency. We can have sea levels rise, meaning more salt water in water systems, meaning more money spent to get rid of it. So in any case, as the word has been introduced, there is a need, and it is a challenge, which is the management of scarcity. You mentioned that yourself, Gabriel, at the beginning. Many areas of the world have no water, very little water, and the management of scarcity will be a very important aspect, I think. And of course, because we know that the drought, this increasing drought intensity and frequency may result in overdraft, unless drought planning is improved. So we have to have an improvement in governance also. We've been working on governance these last years, especially groundwater governance, but also as we integrate groundwater and surface water governance all together. And problem of reduction in demand, for instance, we have to work on that, and improvement in supply, both ways. And this is where there is a lot of both technical and theoretical work to be done, which is to develop alternative supply, like treated wastewater recharge, stormwater harvesting, for instance, and other, which implies a lot of investment in infrastructure. So we come back to the problem of money. But we have also to develop what is being start to be developed now, what I call imaginative solutions, like trading, water trading, banking, land following, for instance, etc. And of course, to enhance groundwater storage, for instance, because groundwater is a good reserve of water altogether, which means managing surface water and groundwater as one system, IWRM. And I would just conclude here that I think that the problem of economic impacts are very, very important. And this, we have to develop perhaps a better water economy.
But yeah, please, Mahmoud, please.
It's important that climate change has been mentioned, so forth. But I think we should not forget the need for more work. It's a real challenge to work on the non-conventional water resources to fill in the gap between supply and demand, including the desalination, agriculture water reuse, treated wastewater, brackish groundwater, and rainfall harvesting. These has become an irreplaceable strategic options. So we should keep that in mind. Thank you.
Absolutely.
We have a very specific issue in California, Mahmoud, which is flood flows, capturing the flood flows, because we have drier and then wetter periods where we have a lot of water that falls at once, and how to keep it and to store it. So capturing the flood flows and storing them underground, which is one aspect, at least in California. Which
not only California, also in Texas, where I live, we have a very similar situation. But I know that Ben wanted to chime in.
I just wanted to add to this climate aspect is that international climate agreements, like the Paris Agreement, that I came across reading about it, that water is still not introduced into those agreements. That, in other words, we're talking about emissions a lot, but we're not really bringing water into the issue. And the reason is probably we don't know how, but it is important, and IWRA should look into this, and we need to be aware of all this problems that Jean was talking about, with climate change and economic impacts, and the need for unconventional sources of water, as Mahmoud mentioned them, and Jean. All of these have to be sort of brought up to the awareness related to climate change, because and also I wanted to mention that there be also a call for physical science, for scientists like in hydrology, that something called like advanced large domain hydrologic modeling and global hydrology. We hardly ever, I wasn't even thinking about stuff like that when I was teaching hydrology, at the university. But this would be very important for dealing with water resources or water scarcity under climate change. And these are tools that are pure science. I mean, we need them.
So let me ask all of you, one of the things that I think everybody has mentioned economics or water value in one aspect or another. And I just wonder, when you think about water for people, especially for people who don't have access, or the poor and so on, but also water for the environment, and then we have water for industry, and we try to come up with mechanisms to assess economic value or intrinsic value or social value. I mean, water is everything. It's everywhere, and it's necessary. How can we bridge all these different competing claims for that everyone says, well, it's valuable to me or valuable for our thing? There is no substitute for water, and yet it's, you turn on the tap, and here in Texas we pay $5 per 1,000 gallons. It's almost nothing. So I mean, how do we deal with the valuation and the economics of it, and then of course the externalities? We use water, but then we don't realize we are depleting resources. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that we have here to make a difference between, how do you say, the access to water. This is the how do you say, water as a drinkable water. And this is, we have to pay for that service. And this is a value that it is different from the other value of water in general. I think that this is what I was asking was the need to have some value of water in general, water for water in irrigation, water in agriculture, water in commodities, or and value in the water in aquifers, for example. What aquifers is something that I think that it is also something that it was very, very important in the awareness about the importance of aquifers was one of the most important things in the last 50 years. And so, and IWRA has also been very instrumental, because it has only been aware of this, of aquifers. It has a lot of publications, a lot of issues on aquifers, and also, how do you say, it worked closely with UNESCO on that. And so I think that it is one of the, how do you say, important quality changes in water is in these 50 years is the awareness of the importance of aquifers and how they will be even every moment more important in the future. And so I think that this is one of the most important things.
Does anybody else have any other additional perspectives on economics and value? Ben, please.
I think that the way we've been dealing with this value of water is through priorities on on different uses of water, like drinking water that Lillian mentioned. That's the highest priority. In other words, it will take precedence over agricultural irrigation or water for industry. Usually it's a little bit higher than irrigation. And so the policymakers generally deal with this allocation, but it will become more severe, likely in some places where water scarcity is a problem, and we will have to make kind of like sacrifices, at some point, and not be fully have a full utilization and productivity of water in agriculture, like in Texas. In Texas, water plan does not call for expansion of agricultural irrigation anymore because there is not enough water in the state. So it's those difficult decisions will come, and they already here in some regions.
So one of the, John.
No, I just want to say that we are not equal in front of water, because there are different people who have different accesses to water. And I mentioned an issue at the beginning of the talk, which equity. I think this will be a very important problem in the years to come with the people who have a low income and should have access to water. Should they have free water? I don't think so, because then you don't save water correctly if it is free. That is well known. But anyway, it's a discussion about how to deal with equity in general for the low-income communities, for vulnerable, for communities which have small vulnerable water systems, or where rely only on domestic wells, and the aquifer is depleted, and the wells get dry. All of a sudden, these farmers don't have any way of earning their living. So we are facing this type of problem now, also when we speak of the economic impact of climate change or of nature in general.
So one of the things that I think is particularly critical, and I think you've all said it in one way or another, is generating information and sharing information. And I wonder we have new technologies now. We have satellites, we have weather stations, we have remote sensing, we have drip irrigation technologies that you put on every plant. You have all sorts of fantastic information that we can gather. How can we leverage that information, and how can we especially leverage it in particular towards achieving the sustainable development goals, but also, Jean, as you say, equity. There's a lot of places that don't have the resources to the technologies or the access to the technologies. So how do you see that as the information, sharing information come into play?
This is where IWRA comes into the picture, because our association can really stimulate and provide information and education, I think. This is an important aspect of our action, I think. And this information, not only among specialists like we are, but more general, to try to reach the public also, that the webinars are open, or courses, etc. This is, I think, where the role of our association is really very, very significant.
Yes. No, because if I can add something, because it is really that information is available, but it is not free. So the countries every country has not the same access to information. That's what we are saying, and it is very important the role of IWRA just to disseminate for everybody the information. Yes.
So is this something that should be on the global agenda as a priority to enhance access and to enhance sharing of information? Is this something that we can do as a policy matter globally? Mahmoud?
Yes, I think it has to be injected in policies and plans that access to information is made available. This will bring up the question of is the information free or free of charge or has a price? And exchange of information should be, I think, on a free basis, so that everyone can make use of it. This should be injected in the departments of the ministries, that regulations, what are the regulations which makes information available to everyone. But here we come to the question of sharing information among different countries, especially countries sharing a river or a basin. This should be an agreement, legal agreements that make the exchange of information and sharing information possible. It is essential when we talk about the local level, regional level, that this should happen much easier than when we talk about international level. Anyway, there should be ways and means in the legislation to make this sharing of information possible, I guess.
So Mahmoud, you're talking about sharing information between countries and engaging different groups, engaging countries to cooperate. I'm wondering though, if any of you have any thoughts about going beyond just countries, but going to communities, engaging specific communities. You have indigenous communities, you have women as a distinct community, and in many countries, women bring the water. They're responsible for water and for sometimes agriculture. So they have, there's gender issues, there's youth issues. We have right now there's a World Youth Parliament for Water, where the youth are becoming engaged, or they want to be engaged. I'm wondering, what role do they have in terms of being involved in the information sharing, but also being involved in sort of the discussions, maybe even decision making? Lillian, I don't know if you've had opportunity to think about these kinds of different groups and engaging them.
Well, I don't know if in different groups, but I think that at least in our region, the participation of people in all the decisions of resources, the uses of resources, especially in water, it's something that it is very well, how you say, accepted and developed. There are always now the politicians know that they have to consult the opinion of people. You cannot only make plans and just without ignoring what the people thinks about that. And I think that perhaps 50 years ago it was like that, where you have big projects and nobody has, the people just didn't know what about that. But now it is a completely different approach. I think that this is something that, yes, it has been how you say, at least for example, in America, well, in South America, or in general in Latin America, I think that it is working well. But yes.
Yeah. Well, Mahmoud, I'm seeing you're shaking your head yes, and I just want.
Yes, I would like to refer to the establishment of water users associations on the canal level, and so people would share information and work together on the local level.
Yeah, good. Well, we have only about 8 minutes left. And we've responded to quite a few questions here that have been submitted. And I wanted to maybe at least give everybody a minute or so to give a conclusion in terms of what you think, your assessment of how we are doing as a global community on water, and maybe your assessment of IWRA, how IWRA is doing on water issues. So Lillian, do you want to start us, please?
Well, I think that, well, I already said that I think that it is so important to have a comprehensive institution about water issues. But I think, I don't know if it is about the institution, but I think about us as the members of the IWRA. And I think that IWRA has created, or I don't know, something, it's an idea I have only, that we have now the College of Water, the Water College, the College of Water Experts. So we are now this college. And so we are not only the people with our professions, but we are also people we have our professions and our different activities, but we have also a common interest in water issues, in water development, in water uses. And so I think that we have now this water college. We are I feel that we are a college of water experts, and this is something I don't know if it's something.
I really love that idea. I think that's a really wonderful way to describe this community.
Yes, yeah. Because I was thinking, what are we? Because we are always we are people dealing with water, interested in water. I think, this is a college. This is a college. We are the water college, the College of Water Experts.
Right, Mahmoud, member of our water college. What do you think?
Well,
any concluding thoughts?
I would say that one of the main objectives of IWRA is to encourage, promote, and participate in international, regional, national, and local programs and activities related to water resources for the common benefits of humankind and the biosphere. It can be concluded that IWRA can play a positive role in enhancing the activities already started, I think, on the Arab region scale in full cooperation and coordination with our Arab Water Council. Another IWRA's objective of no less importance is to maximize the networking and knowledge sharing opportunities for stakeholders through participating in international and regional events like the World Water Congress, for example.
All right, thank you. Jean?
Well, I think IWRA is already playing that role of a college, as introduced by Lilian. I think that it should stimulate, as it already does, but goes on it, international cooperation to create the local competencies able to work on their own development, not necessarily to bring people from outside, but to develop their own knowledges. And this is where IWRA, by diffusing information and also promoting education, could really work very positively. And also, I think that association with UNESCO that we experienced for the international conference of last November was very positive. And it was a way also to bring to the people, and it was the preoccupation of Mahmoud, I think, the free information because of that association to an international organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
This is for the moment my conclusion.
Yeah. So Ben, you have been executive director in the past of the association. You were editor-in-chief of the journal Water International. You have a, I think, unique perspective on the role of the association. But looking forward, what do you hope for? What would you like to see? Where should the association go, and what should it do?
Yes, I think IWRA is already publishing and disseminating new knowledge through Water International and World Water Congress, and the level and productivity is pretty amazing as it is now. One thought I had before this conference was, why can't we have something like IPCC, International Panel on Climate Change. We could have international panel on water, just like Lillian and Mahmoud were talking about, that we need that college. I'd like that college to be there and working, productive and integrating, because I think that we could do more integration, either through publication or issuance of certain reports, that could have much larger global college of experts that would agree to participate, just like the climate scientists do. But I may be wrong about it, because maybe water is not amenable to this kind of treatment. But it was just a thought, that we could have that.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea and a great way to end this session. And I appreciate all of your participation and engagement and your ideas. You all have such a wonderful experiences with the water sector over many years, and we're really honored to have you all participate in this program, this high-level panel, in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the International Water Resources Association. So with that, I would thank you all for participating. Thank you to all the attendees for joining us. And we'll reconvene. There will be another high-level panel in about a month or so with additional distinguished guests, and we will have additional celebratory events throughout the year to celebrate the history of this association, but also looking forward into the future. And I absolutely encourage all of you to join us, and thank you all, and be safe. So thank you, everyone.
And
thank you.
I wish to thank you, Gabriel, really.
Thank you.
On behalf
Thank you, Gabriel. Thank you, Gabriel.
My pleasure.
Very much, Gabriel.
Very much.
Yes.
My great pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much. And great pleasure to see you all.
And also thank you to Ignacio, who is
And to Ignacio, yes, to Ignacio.
who is in the background.
And IWRA office for wonderful
There he is.
organization.
Yes, yes.
All right. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.